Hi there! Welcome to Urbinary, the podcast cataloging the everyday and extraordinary in the city.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Urbinary. I'm Giulia and today I'm here with my co-host Mahya.
Hey everyone!
We are diving deep into reality tourism and we are thrilled to have Joanne Camello joining us. Joanne's an architect, urban planner and writer hailing from Manila, bringing her fresh perspective after graduating from Politecnico di Milano.
Absolutely. Giulia, Joanne has been doing some fascinating work in the field. So we're super excited to chat with her today.
Joanne's thesis, Reality in the Limelight, is our starting point. We are going to unpack the complexities of a opening excursion in poorest urban areas. Let's dive in.
Urbinary.
Hi Joanne, thrilled to have you on Urbinary.
Hello, Joanne. I know it sounds so fake before we were talking, but okay.
Hi everyone. Hello Maya and Julia. It's nice to be here.
You know, Joanne, when you touch of the evolution of the terms like slums across different regions, it got me thinking about the cultural dimension of this phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely, Julia. Actually, it is so interesting when we look at it, how this concept has changed in different continents.
Yeah, and in fact, we are curious to know, like, what sparked your interest in delving into this issue, Joanne?
So I feel like I was inspired to dwell on this topic because I am very interested during the housing studio with Professor Massimo. We were dwelling about unaffordability. And during the contemporary course with Professor Nobre, we've read a lot about topics including, mega events, like how it goes with that in Brazil and other case studies outside Europe. And I feel like when I entered Polymy, I was expecting that the courses would be more, very diverse. But I felt like, of course, there's more materials dwelling on urban planning issues in Europe. So I would expect that there's a lot more conversations and discussions regarding issues in Europe. But I feel like, I don't know if I will be cancelled saying this, but I think it's very Eurocentric. And like from my end, I feel like it's about time, let's talk about something else like on the other side of the world. Like maybe it's about time you open topics on underdeveloped and developing countries as well. And maybe it's about time that we try to use the context of what we use here in Europe and then put it somewhere else. So yeah, I also because I'm from the Philippines.
Okay.
So in general, like I have more idea of what Asian countries or developing countries look like.
But I think this point of view, it's very interesting, especially because we are, at least Polymies try to welcome a lot of international students.
Yes.
And I guess it's nice that international student then brings their ideas.
Exactly.
So that's
Yes.
the key point. Okay, so moving on, I think that for really understanding like the topic of your thesis, it would be beneficial for us to understand what does it mean, the term slums, or in general, what is a poor community as you describe in your thesis. Yeah, so when we were like preparing the episode, Maya and I thought that it's impossible to give a unique perspective on the term slums. So I don't know if Maya want to add something on this point.
To be honest, I really want to say something about slums.
Okay.
We all think as planners, let's not say all, most of the time we look at slums as a problem. But let's look at it like that. We have many thesis topics actually that are working on how to make city safe for kids. And look at slums. Kids are playing on the streets. The
Right.
place that we call actually unsafe, because it is unplanned for us. But maybe actually there must be an organic plan and in it that people look at each other. They have a big and strong community there. So I call these places the most resilience. And we want to just enter them and change this resiliency instead of learning from them?
Okay. Actually, there's a lot of like keywords that you can actually get from what you said. In general, slums is very fixated on the idea that it's very, very negative. It's dilapidated housing. It's filthy. It's dirty. It's unsafe, and so on. But when you said like, oh, it seems like when you see slums nowadays, like kids play around. But then, if you look at it, you see it that way because they have their own culture, and we have our own culture itself. Like, what is your idea of safety, and what is their idea of safety? They feel very comfortable in their own space because that's their territory. And we think like, oh my gosh, it's so filthy, it's so dirty. Like, how can people live here and so on? But if you look inside, they actually survive. Like it's a whole new community with bustling enterprises. They do different culture. They have lifestyle. You can do parties inside. You look at favelas and so on. You look at Rione Sanità, like it's Rione Sanità is not slum, but it's like part of the community that they say poor communities. I was trying to do my thesis in terms of how do you not really like put yourself in a box that slums are just this one. In general, I was trying to put on reality tours in different contexts of neighborhood. Like, okay, you put this city or neighborhood as slum, but on other contexts or other typology, they call it favela. So, there might be a few similarities, yes, but in general, okay, like let me talk about how if you tell me now, if you ask me now, like, okay, what slum is in general is poor community, poor housing, poor, it's unsafe, it's uncomfortable, it's the way we see it, it's very impoverished. So like where culture is very diverse, there's a lot of illegal activities, like that's the common notion of slum. And they have lack of sanitation and so on. So that's the common notion of poor housing. But once you actually look into the bigger picture or like look inside what slum is, there's more to that. Like whatever you're saying right now, okay, like they could be resilient at some point, but from other perspective, it's also different. So I think it's a bigger picture that we have to dissect on.
Okay, I think we have a lot to reflect on, like after this conversation. But moving on, like the concept of reality tourism that you, I guess it was like the main topic of your thesis. I found that by reading your thesis, at a certain point, you mentioned that, for example, people were going to tourism in Harlem because of the Afro community or the Afro-American heritage, or for example, the hip-hop music. So you start like reflecting on reality tourism by mentioning some example as the one that I just said. But as like we are now here, I'd like to know from you what does really means reality tourism, and also now since like this couple of questions that we developed with you, we have focused on the developing countries, but I want to understand if this kind of reality tourism is happening also in the global north, and also I'm curious to understand who are the key players of this reality tourism.
Okay. So I think it would be better for me to explain the quote unquote reality tours in terms of from the very start. So you see there I made like a reality tours concept map based on a concept map of tourism of a researcher. And I tried to make my own interpretation of what reality tours is. So in general, tourism, there's like mass tourism and there's alternative tourism. So mass tourism is like, okay, you go to Rome, you go to Positano or something like that, And then when you go to alternative tours, it's mostly like natural, cultural, or events and so on. So in general, I would put reality tours in terms of cultural. And under cultural, there's dark crisis tourism. There's ethnic tourism, indigenous tourism, something related to history and heritage, and also there's also pilgrimage. But if we look at reality tours, it's under dark and crisis tourism because you go to slums, you go to impoverished communities, and the automatic, or I wouldn't say automatic, but the common notion of it's impoverished. It's very poor, so it's on the bubble of crisis. And aside from that, so like under dark and crisis tourism, there's like tragedy. The when you go on tours, say for Holocaust, you go to a concentration camp. That's dark tourism, they say. And then there's also one which is focusing on poverty. So there's tragedy and poverty. And under that poverty, that bubble, I deemed it same as other researchers who were doing this topic itself. They were dwelling on topics on poverty, but not just slums, but also favelas, townships, other neighborhoods. Not necessarily it has to be in a underdeveloped or developing countries, and also homeless people. So like in that bubble, that's how I envision what reality tours are. And so of course the key players that participate in this phenomenon, of course, the destination communities, quote unquote destination communities. These are, as I mentioned, the favelas, the slum communities, and so on, and the tour guides, the tourists. Of course, it wouldn't happen without the tourists because that's the market. The government, sometimes even the NGOs are also part of this phenomenon, and I think the very influential key actor in this phenomenon is the media. You put everything on social media, then okay, let's go there. When they put everything on the TV or films, the destination becomes really popular. So that's what drives the tourists to go there. Oh, you see, I saw this on a movie. Let me go there. In general, if you're gonna ask me, okay, slums and favelas, they are in underdeveloped or developed countries. But actually, it's not just happening in the global south, as they call it, or because like in general, the history of this happened in the global north. Actually, it started like in London and the US. Like the early reality tours, quote unquote, started like in the global north. And if you see it now, it's still happening in the global north. It's not it, but it's different. It's a different factor. Of course, like it's not necessarily that you can go to Barcelona and then like, okay, is there a slum in Barcelona? It's different. But right now, the example of poverty tourism that's happening in the global north are mostly tours that involve homeless people. I know it might sound absurd for some, but it's really happening. Like there are some case studies that, okay, we are offering you a tour so you can experience to be homeless in one day. It's happening. Like I put it on my thesis. The first time I saw it, I'm like, is this serious?
Yes, crazy.
So like if I'm going to elaborate it, like because like it's easy for you to say, okay, like when they go to a typical global south community and then they do the tour, they do the walking tour, etc. But in the global north, of course, like you can go to the shady parts where the drug trafficking can happen, like say here in Europe and so on. But like this certain example of like homeless people tour, they confiscate everything, your belongings and so on. And then you have to survive the whole day without anything. And then one homeless guy will teach you how to survive, just so you can experience this type of phenomenon. So it's very diverse. So like right now, when you ask me, okay, is it happening in both the global north and global south? Yes, but in a different context.
Probably even worse here than in the so-called global south.
Well, yeah. So I think it's how you interpret it. Like, would you want to experience like, okay, like if I'm being totally transparent about it, the thing is like my thesis is not really dwelling on how morally ethical this is or this and that, or like, oh, if you're doing this, you're absurd, you're very unethical, like, oh, what's your moral perspective? It's not that. The thing is like, okay, you do this, say the homeless experience, or you do the tours walking around Dharavi. In the end, like y- us, three of us cannot judge whether that guy is morally, um like it's so hard to tell if they are unethical or not. You cannot judge them because in the end it matters in the end of the whoever is doing it. Like, I'm going there because what? Because of what? And then it's also relying on the perspective of the destination community. Like, the communities, do they feel offended? Then that makes it worse, or like that, in that way you can interpret it, okay, they're doing something wrong. Like, it's a two-way thing, and it's so hard to tell from a third perspective.
It's so that the last part that you're mentioning, like, because recently I was working on our Instagram account and I was sharing some stuff about urban branding and slum branding. And I got into an article about India because after Slumdog movie, it became so trendy to go there to have to experience real India. I don't know what kind of real, how we are defining a country just with their slums. But anyway, let's go on that direction. The interesting thing was that they were saying that residents were happy with that experience because they were saying that, okay, they are bringing money in the place that we are living. And there are so many ways of looking at it. Why like, I don't know, the people in power, government, municipalities are putting these people in this situation and maintaining it to earn even more money and convincing them, okay, this is good enough for you. But of course, there are other cases. For instance, like, I don't remember properly the name of the city in the Brazil, but the cable line that they have made there, like, people are so unsatisfied with that project, and they even call them white elephant because they are saying that they are coming here and to watch our poverty on top from the top. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually this is connect to another question that we wanted to ask. So, how much this reality tourism can help in reducing stereotype?
Yeah, so this question is actually part of the impacts that I was referring to, like in my thesis. In general, I tried to categorize how it becomes, like it uplifts the stigma. So in general, I try to put it like as a catalyst for change. Like, how can this phenomenon actually make a change in terms of improving the quality of life of the people? But at the same time, I put it into words like fuel to the fire. Like, in general, there's still debates on voyeurism, and the commodification of poverty is still prevalent when you dwell on this topic. So yes, it could uplift the stigma because they're seeing a different side of what slums is. When you go to the slums, like you said, as you said earlier, as we discussed, like, it's very negative. But once you enter, okay, oh, like this is not just garbages. Like, it's totally different. So once you experience what's inside that community, then that changes everything. So like there's a change of perception, and also you challenge the common stereotypes of what impoverished communities are. And at the same time, like you contradict the brand of unfavorable city. It's more of like say in Manila, you go to Manila, I don't know the perspective of people. Like, probably, okay, Manila is just a typical capital, like very chaotic and Asian country and so on. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of slums. I don't know if that's your perception, but maybe like it's a bustling community, city and so on. But say also for India, if you go to Mumbai, see, like it's very congested and so on. So like I wouldn't want to go there because like it's this and that and this and that. But once you get inside the community, say for Daravi, or you go to the Rusina and so on, like in favelas, it changes everything. Not really everything, but you saw the micro experience. That's why you try to. Now you have a macro picture that is totally different from before you entered. So it's more of like you changed the idea of the city itself because you saw something very, very particular.
This let me think to the fact that, okay, we can see new additional information about a city, but at the same time, there is not like the risk of reducing the importance of working in this area, because if we see them as a place where maybe they are not living that bad, where they are happy and so on, there is not like the risk of this kind of tourism to say, but maybe there is not a real problem here, and then the authority will not like consider this because it actually gains money because there are tourists coming there for this season and so on and so on.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you mentioned this, or because in general, this is really part of my conclusion. I started my thesis with research question. In general, like how does the phenomenon of reality tours reshape the urban context of impoverished communities? And at the same time, what is the potential of the phenomenon in developing concepts on urban planning strategies and policy frameworks? But in the end, in my conclusion, I try to do a myotic approach wherein you question the question and like try to extract some illicit or extract or elicit some knowledge that you had before and try to, question the question or question the answer. You get what I mean? So in general, I was thinking, okay, in general, reality tours, you put the poverty on spotlight. Maybe it's best that I explain this in general because you were mentioning this one point. Oh, okay, like now that they're poor and we are getting some money from it, let's keep them poor. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So like that's also one point of what I was trying to put. So like there's this putting poverty on the spotlight where we deconstruct poverty in terms of there's a new picture of misery, and it seems like it's an alternative observational scheme. So it's like you overlap a picture with a new one, and okay, this is what poverty looks like, and then you don't just focus on you put a new picture because you don't focus on the tour of poverty because you put a picture on the culture. There's like hip hop, there's like a lot of happening in favelas and so on. There's economization. There's a lot of like pottery making inside the Ravi and so on. So, but also in general, I was mentioning earlier, there's this valorization of social fabric in terms of like you see the value inside the slums. You see the value of favela. So there's some value extraction that it seems like it can be very universal. So wherever the poor is, we can get something from that. Like that's the idea of it. And it seems like now poverty is a brand. Like because like okay, now this is getting some values in terms of tourism. People are looking at it. So my question was in general. So if we put it in like we list these points. Do you think this could be ignorance of the poor? Because you're putting a new perspective, a new meaning of what it used to be. And in general, this could be a new interpretation of what reality or authenticity is. So whatever you say authentic can be very subjective too. And at the same time, you try to romanticize the poor. And in that way, if you try to put a new picture on what poverty is, does that make it does that reduce the significance of what poor is? So like it's a whole lot of discussion that we have to dissect on, because like there's a lot of perspectives on one side, and also like we are only talking as researchers. We are very from a third perspective, like we don't live there. Like it's not like we experience living there in general, or like we live in that city or so on. But it's hard to tell because at the on the other side, if I am to contradict that, we put the poverty on the spotlight, but then we ignoring the poor? But at the same time, it could be a tool for upgrading. In that way, the informal city or like the informal communities in general can be a laboratory for urban development because they see the potential in it. So maybe we can improve it. So we can accommodate more tourists. Let's improve the pathways. Let's add lights so they feel safe every time they walk around this community and so on. So in that way, they can improve the tourism and housing policies, frameworks, and so on. And in from our end, we become the accessories to authorities. Like urban planners, architects, policymakers. We become accessories to that. And come to think of it, are we becoming, or in general, if we put in perspective that informal cities or informal communities become laboratory for urban experiment, are we using them as political capital or social capital too? Like these are the questions that's kind of like, okay, you put them in a perspective that it's tool for upgrading, but only for political agendas, or is it serving the elites because like politicians and so on? Or it could be a safeguard against displacement or gentrification because like since you're value extracting, like, or you're trying to improve the community itself, so you are investing a lot in that community, so you are safeguarding them from displacement so that they see the value inside, so they don't have the, at least like the politicians will be, or like the government itself will be like, okay, people go here, let's not displace them, like let's keep them as is and then let's just improve them. It's another topic, that another issue that we have to dwell on. But then at the same time, what you were saying a while ago, like this could be somehow, when you say like let's keep them poor, say like that, like if we put it in the phrase, it seems like a very transitory or temporary solution to urban rehabilitation, because like how long can you keep this phenomenon happening? In general, it's not really like a permanent solution on everything, but you can put a perspective of like, you have to sustain the otherness, you have to sustain what's different from before, or like you have to sustain what differs this community to the other side of Napoli, to the other side of Rio, and so on, so we can keep this going. But then at the same time, it transforms the market and probably changes the urban fabric. So
Okay.
I know it's a lot to digest, because like I was explaining the main core of the
Yeah.
conclusion itself. But if I am to answer that, I have to tell all those points
Yeah,
to,
of course.
like it's hard to.
Just go directly to the
Yes.
answer, of course.
But I want to say, like, anyway, poverty exists. And as long as we have poverty, there are going to be slums around the cities because there is money in the city and poor people are going to be attracted to the cities. So I say, like, this phenomena, like poverty branding, as long as it is working for the community, like what is happening in Colombia, like, okay, if it is working, people are happy with the result, even though, okay, as a professional, I might think it is not ethical, at least it is causing some level of improvement without causing displacement. Let's look at it like that. But if it is just about branding, not giving any good to the people who are actual residents of there, yeah, I call that would be a problem.
Yeah, I think probably it is a topic that has to be divided into a lot of different categories and analyzed.
Yeah, that's true.
I hope that you want to add something.
No, I just want to say, actually, thank you, Joanne.
Yeah.
It was so amazing having
Yeah.
you here. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to just say that I hope that this conversation will be beneficial for some listeners that maybe will take the advantages of this first reflection to go deeper and reflect more on the topic and connect to maybe other topics. So I hope that.
Urbinary.
But before concluding, we want to ask you something that it's like a common question, let's say, to all our guests. And we really like to understand what kind of urban planners you aspire to be. If you aspire to be an urban planner.
That is a very hard question to say. I think it would be very hypocritical of me if I don't say everything. Okay, like just as any other professional, I want to be a planner or an architect with financial stability. But like just as everyone else. But in general, if I'm being serious about it, like I want to be a planner that does not serve the rich. Or in general, like I wouldn't say, of course it's very inevitable right now. I'm working for a private company, and also like the projects that we usually dwell on, urban planners and architects in general, we build something because that's where the money is, and it's so hard to control that part. At the end of the day, we have to eat. We have to put roof under our head. No, we have to put roof above our head. For me, it's if I am to be really honest about it, I want to be a planner. I aspire to be a planner who values equality and diversity. I think that's why I'm saying it's inevitable to serve the rich, like in this very capitalistic world. Like if we have to be honest, but if there's a chance, or if like all professionals have the chance to make a change and serve also the needies and so on, like at least like if I build something like say for the rich, does that make me a bad planner? Like it's kind of like hard to tell. But what I'm saying is like if there's a chance, or like if we can make a change in general that does not serve this capitalistic world, and
that would become your dream.
That is a dream. That is a dream that is very hard to reach. But yeah, I want to be a planner that's very fulfilled at the end of the day, because I serve people, not just the rich.
Okay, so thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you, Joanne, for joining us. I already told you it was a blast. I enjoyed so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was a really fun experience. It's my first time actually guesting in a podcast, but this is fun.
Great.
This is fun. It's just like a coffee table talk, it's very informal, but then you still keep the same conversation going.
We are happy that you had this idea, because it was our aim to have this second season in this way. Okay. We are happy that we...
Thank you. That was a good feedback.
It's cool.
And for our listeners, stay tuned for our next episode with Sweta and Bushra, who will be conversing with Dilip Parekh. They will be exploring the role of religions in the planning of cities. Additionally, they will continue our reflection on tourism by observing religious tourism in India. Urbanary is produced in collaboration with Poliradio, the official radio channel at Politecnico di Milano.
Urbinary, the podcast cataloging the everyday and extraordinary in the city.